on, New York Giants fans? It is game day. Patriots, Giants. It's going to be an exciting day. Get to see the starters for at least a half, then the bubble guys afterwards, and then we don't get football for about a week, week and a half, and then the Giants come along week one against the Broncos. So it's going to be an exciting couple of weeks here. Obviously, heading into the season, predictions, this, that, and the other thing will be made about the 2021 season, and one of them is going to be the 53-man roster. Now, this is going to be the 53-man roster prediction that is before the waiver wire, because in the past, we've seen a lot of guys make the final 53, and then when that waiver wire comes around, they get cut, they get traded, they get this, that, and the other thing, and new players come onto the roster and make an impact for the Giants or whatever team you root for. So, with that being said, let's go into it. But first, I do want to outline my predictions from the past. So last year, I got 7 players wrong, which is about, and I know I'm being a geek about this, an 86.7 efficiency. So I thought the following players were going to make the roster. I thought David Sills would make the roster, Cooper Rush, Benjamin Victor, Ryan Connolly, Josiah Taua-Efa, Chris Williamson, and Brandon Williams. Williams actually made the roster about a day later, after the waiver wire and stuff like that. He was mainly a special teams guy, but they cut him later in the season. He was on and off with the Giants in 2020. Rest of the guys did not make the roster at all. Some made the practice squad, some didn't. David Sills was injured, and he was out for the year. Now, the following guys I thought were going to miss the roster. I did not count Isaac Yiadom in because I think when I made my predictions, Isaac Yiadom was not even on the team yet. He was traded in September. I made my predictions in late August, so obviously there's the story there. But Isaac Yiadom, Chad Slade, Tay Crowder, Carter Coughlin, C.J. Board, and T.J. Brunson. So I don't have a 7th player for that because I didn't have enough time to do the research in my past. But I got 7 wrong last year. The year before, 6 wrong with my Giants fan page. Rod Smith, T.J. Jones, George Asafa J, Chad Wheeler, C.J. Conrad, and John Jenkins. I thought they were going to make the roster. But these players made the 53 before the waiver wire, and you'll see why I'm saying that. Garrett Dickerson, Alonzo Russell, Sean Chandler, Brian Mahalik, Kareem Martin, and B.J. Goodson. B.J. Goodson was traded, Mahalik was cut, Russell was cut. So that's why I said before the waiver wire, a lot of things can happen. A lot of crazy shit can happen, so obviously that's something to keep in mind for. But anyway, without further ado, let's go into the predictions, offense, defense, special teams, and then the cuts at the end. So let's get right into it, Giant fans. Here is the offensive side of the ball. A lot of teams within the past year are keeping track of, hey, listen, last year really showed us we don't need 3 quarterbacks. So I have the Giants keeping 2, and they only had 3 in the preseason, which shows they're going to cut 1 and then keep the other 2, those being Mike Lennon and Daniel Jones. The running back room, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Booker, Corey Clement, and Eli Penny. A lot of people don't have Clement making the roster, but I thought he was, decently explosive, for a lack of better words, in the preseason, other than that fumble in terms of the running game. In terms of the wide receiver room, Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, John Ross, and David Sills. John Ross, if he doesn't get better with his injury, he's been out all these practices and stuff like that, working with the trainers. If he doesn't get better, he'll probably be held to the 53, and then a day later, maybe IR or PUP. So, just a thing to keep in mind. Tight ends, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, and Caden Smith, probably the most cut and clear room here besides the quarterbacks. Offensive line, Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, Nick Gates, Jonathan Harrison, Nate Solder, Matt Parrott, Will Hernandez. Then the other 2 really bubble backups, Kenny Wiggins, Chad Slade. I think the Giants like Kenny Wiggins. Not saying the fans do, but the Giants like Kenny Wiggins. They've been playing him at the first-team left guard in relief of Shane Lemieux and his injury. And then Chad Slade, they've had him at right tackle and left tackle for the first team a couple of times in camp, not in the preseason games. So I think they keep him there and say, hey, listen, we need an extra lineman, someone who could play both guard and tackle, and I think Chad Slade is that guy, at least in my opinion for right now. So the next side of the ball is the defensive side of the ball. A lot of people will be shocked with some of my predictions, but you know what? That's their thing. These are my predictions. For the defensive line, Leonard Williams, Danny Shelton, B.J. Hill, Austin Johnson, David Moa, and Dexter Lawrence. That should not come as a surprise to many. Only one player should, and that's David Moa. I thought, now in camp he's been really silent, but in terms of preseason games when, action is real, I thought he's forced some pressure on the quarterback, penetrated the offensive line into the backfield to make some tackles or at least try to do something in the run game. And, that stuff really doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And a lot of the guys don't have all 22 films, so they can't see that. But David Moa has forced 2 fumbles this preseason. One on Kyle Lauletta, one I think on LaMichael Perrine or one of the other guys for the Jets in terms of running backs. So that's something to keep in mind. And David Moa, if he does make the roster, he's not going to be asked to do a big task. That task being, hey, just be a depth piece, be ready to have your name called. For the linebacker room, Blake Martinez, Tay Crowder, Reggie Ragland, Carter Coughlin, Trent Harris, Azeez Ojulari, Lorenzo Carter, O'Shane Ximines, and Ellerson Smith. Ellerson Smith, why I put that set of parentheses around him is because, he can make the final 53, and then the next day he's probably going on PUP or IR for about 3 to 6 weeks. And, when they call him back, he obviously can come off IR, not like, if you're put on IR before the season begins, before the 53-man cutdown, and you're automatically out for the season unless you can find your way back with an injury designation that involves you getting cut, and that's a whole process the Giants probably don't want to go through, especially with a draft pick. So some point outs here, Trent Harris, he's had an excellent camp so far in terms of camp in the preseason games, trying to set the edge in the run game, something that O'Shane Ximines can't do, but Ximines was really good in the pass game last week against the Browns, so that's something to note. Cam Brown, obviously, for his special teams. Obviously, I stated Ellerson Smith already, so move to the defensive backs room. James Bradbury, Adoree Jackson, Darnay Holmes, Keon Crossan, and Radarius Williams. Those are your 5 starting. And here's why I say 5 starting. Aaron Robinson, he's probably going to be kept, and then they just go ahead and put him on IR or put him on PUP. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know the guidelines in terms of, PUP, IR, this, that, and the other thing. Well, in terms of IR, I know the guidelines. It's, before the 53-man cutdown, you can't be put on there unless, you're out for the season, injury designation, something I just explained. But PUP, I don't know the specific guidelines, so I'm going to say they activate him and then put him on IR for 3 weeks. It kind of seems a little more relative to the situation. Then you look at the safety room, pretty basic. Logan Ryan, Jubal Peppers, Julian Love, and Xavier McKinney. So now we go into the special teams room. Take a look at that. Special teams, Graham Gano, Riley Dixon, Casey Kreider. Injured reserve, which is, you're out for the season unless you get an injury designation. Quincy Wilson, TJ Brunson, Josh Kalu, Kyle Murphy, Rice and John, Levine Toilolo, Kologatini, Montre Hartage. Then you look at the temporary IR, the PUP, 2 guys I just mentioned, Aaron Robinson and Ellerson Smith, both after the final 53 cutdowns, which means they could probably go out on the waiver wire, sign a cornerback, sign a, linebacker, sign something of need with those 2 roster spots being vacant. So let's go down to the final one, and that's the roster cuts. Now, everyone who has a asterisk at the end is eligible for the practice squad because they have 3 years or under of experience. Brian Lewerke, obviously we've seen 1 game out of him, maybe 2 today, but I think they'll save that for Mike Lennon, or they might save that for Lewerke. I don't know. Gary Brightwell, obviously 6th-round pick of the Giants. I don't think he makes the roster. I think they'll try to slip him to the practice squad due to his special teams ability. Maybe when they put a guy like Ellerson Smith or Aaron Robinson on IR, they bring him onto the roster for special teams duties and stuff like that. Sandro Platzgummer, he's not going to make the roster. I think he'll be on the practice squad. It's just the way it is. I don't think he's stood out to this coaching staff like some of the other guys in the running back room, so I think he just goes on the practice squad. Cullen Gillespie, he is still eligible for the practice squad. Obviously, he was brought over because of his special teams duties and his special teams abilities, but I think Eli Penny definitely beat him in terms of the fullback battle. Alex Bachman, he's been, in my opinion, kind of a no-show in camp this year, and then going back to last year, he didn't make the roster, so I think he's just a camp body at this point in his career. Maybe he goes on and makes another roster or practice squad or whatever, but that's my feeling on him. Austin Mack obviously didn't really have a great preseason or in training camp, whatever you want to call it, but he really hasn't been on the field. I think he's been injured some of the time, really hasn't been getting first-team reps. Kind of disappointing, but obviously he's got 2 years left of practice squad eligibility. Damian Willis, this is his last year of practice squad eligibility. Obviously, he caught that touchdown pass from Clayton Thorson. He's been okay in camp, but he's not anything to write home about. Matt Cole, obviously the Gunnar Olszewski of the New York Giants, the cornerback, the special teams guy, and the wide receiver, so he probably gets stashing on the practice squad. Maybe New England tries to pick him up, but hopefully the Giants can keep him in terms of his special teams and overall his versatility. Dante Pettis and C.J. Board, I don't think those guys make the roster. I think it's a little late for Pettis, and C.J. Board did muff a punt last week against the Browns, meaning they'll probably go to somebody else in terms of the kick return game, whether it be Peppers or John Ross when he gets healthy. We'll see what happens. Nakia Griffin-Stewart, Jake Hausman, the tight ends, they're both eligible for the practice squad. Really haven't seen much out of them. Jackson Barton, he's eligible for the practice squad in his final year of eligibility, was a 7th-round pick, I believe, of the Colts. Then he moved with the Chiefs, then was with the Giants last year, was pretty much a healthy scratch. Jake Burton really has been, I'm going to say right now, horrible in camp. There was one video where the Patriots defensive lineman just beat him inside, and it looked awful. It looked like Burton was slow, so he's probably going to be on the practice squad. And if he's not on the practice squad, he's going to be somewhere else or looking for a job. Brett Hedgie, I think this is a guy that definitely makes the practice squad. Obviously, I'm not going to do too many predictions in terms of that because it's very hard to predict in terms of that and the waiver wire and stuff like that. But I think Hedgie has played well enough to come back and get another contract. Ted Larson, obviously a limited presence with him. They played him on the first team, but I think they like Kenny Wiggins better than they do Ted Larson. I could be wrong on that one. Elijah Qualls and Willie Henry, just guys for training camp, defensive line depth. In terms of training camp, preseason, really hasn't shown much. Raymond Johnson, he was very impressive in camp, but I don't think he makes the final cut. I think they try to move him to the practice squad, and then maybe when one of those two guys goes to IR, they bring him on for extra defensive line depth. Who knows? The next guy, Ryan Anderson, obviously we know the situation with him now, suspended the first couple of games. He'll probably get cut right away, or they could, in a surprise move, revert him to the suspended list or the restricted list, whatever, and then bring him on as like an extra linebacker. But I don't think that's going to happen. Devontae Downs really hasn't had a good camp, really hasn't had a good preseason overall, and his time is ticking. His time is ticking. Really should have never made the roster last year, in my opinion, but that's just me. Nico Lalos, they'll probably find a spot for on the practice squad, was okay during training camp. Obviously showed out a little bit for the Giants at the end of last season. Ifeadi Odigbo, a big disappointment for the New York Giants, signed from the Vikings, and was expected to be one of those veteran pass rushers in that room, but guys like Trent Harris and O'Shane Ximines definitely outplayed him. And, he's only shown up in 2 practices and maybe like 1 game. So I can't say that guy makes the roster. Sam Beal is pretty much just he's gone. He's gone. There's no point in just explaining it, but he's gotten limited reps. Obviously, he got some stuff with the first team with Adoree Jackson being out, but he's been given way too many freaking chances. Josh Jackson, a lot of people will find this surprising. A lot of beat reporters are saying he's probably going to get cut. A little bit of a trade bust for the New York Giants there, though it's not very high impact. They still gave up Isaac Yiadom for Josh Jackson, and if Adoree Jackson is not ready in week 1, that's going to be tough for the Giants, whether they do something at the corner position, where they do Radarius Williams or start somebody else at the second corner spot. It's going to be difficult because Isaac Yiadom was at least decent. Maybe they move Julian Love there for a week or something like that, but we'll see what happens. But Josh Jackson has been a complete trade bust for the New York Giants so far. Chris Johnson, really can't say much about him. Obviously like the third team free safety. Hasn't played too well. And then Madre Harper, kind of a special teams guy, so he could stick on the practice squad, but he's going to get cut, in my opinion, and not be on the final 53-man roster. So you guys tell me what you guys think of the predictions. I'll obviously check what I got wrong, what I got right, this, that, and the other thing. Obviously, it is a mixed bag, and we don't know what the hell's going to happen. It's like playing bingo. So, with that being said, guys, if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops video drops. Appreciate y'all. Go Giants definitely today. Rooting for some of the guys, or actually all of the guys on the roster. Hopefully we get a win out of the Patriots game and actually show some improvement from last year and actually show something that will stick to people and, get into people's heads in terms of, hey, this Giants team could be good. So we'll see what happens, but peace out. See you later. Stay cool.